Hey guys, MC here, and welcome back to another video, where today we will be diving into the thumbnails, animations, and everything in between that I worked on for Rymdnisse's The Warden Minecraft Series. Now, before we begin, I would like to say that if you haven't seen the series, well, go watch it now. It's one of the biggest and best things that I've been a part of, and I highly recommend watching it. That, and this video will be filled with spoilers, so, yeah. But also, if you purely want to see the animations, there is a link right here, so you can understand exactly what I'm breaking down. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump right in. So starting off, we're taking a look at the first thing I animated for the series, the 4-second clip in episode 1, Hank's death. And I'll be honest here, at the time of animating this, I had no clue that I would be animating about 5 minutes worth of animation. Like, Louis had asked me about small clips, never about full-blown fight animations, but, you know, considering I had never done a full fight before, I was up to the task. Now, kind of getting off topic here, but, this animation was 131 frames, and it consisted of some pretty simple animation, so I was able to crank it out pretty quickly. It started first with downloading the world, and getting it all sorted into Blender, making sure the materials were reacting correctly, and adjusting the lighting. What took the longest was probably the particle systems. Like you can see here, I used a total of 2 particle systems, one of which I just hid. We have this one, which was obviously the smokiness of the nether, and kind of just stayed up towards the camera. Obviously, you can't see the circle in the final shot. And then also, if we go down here, we have the particles for where the lava splashes when Hank falls in. It's kind of hard to see in the animation, in the original animation, but it is there. And then after adjusting some compositing settings and rendering, I managed this as the final output. Again, you can't really see the particles down there too well, but it still adds to the scene. Up next we have the big one, the Return of Camelot, as I call it, which was actually made after the final fight, as a matter of fact. This one ended up being almost 3 minutes in length, totaling over 5,000 frames. And this part of the project definitely took up the majority of the time to complete, and understandably so. When I originally started this part, I wanted to make the entrance of everyone from Camelot to be very dramatic. So of course, who did I have come through the portal first? Milo. Here's a quick breakdown of that scene. So that was the grand opener. Milo comes through the portal, all shockingly. David is like, what? And then everyone else floods through the 2 portals because one just did not seem like it was enough. Because obviously we've got this on the right side, and I mean, we've got everyone spread out like this, and it kind of felt like it would be more even if it was spread out over both sides, so I had 2 portals, or gateways as they're called, and I also had to make, a horse walk cycle here from scratch. It's not very polished, but it was good enough to use in the animation. It did its job. So then, Morgana comes through the portal. It took some time to get the camera work right on that, because obviously the camera kind of goes left and then it shoots out right. Took some trial and error there. And then we have the large shot of everyone here. Ignore. So what happened here is that there were so many characters in the scene that I felt like if I added any more, the scene just would not work properly, or it wouldn't even open up, I was afraid of. So what I did is I used the Knight and Amino Ranger characters interchangeably, so whenever the Knights were in the shot, they would have the Knight skin, and whenever the Amino Rangers were in the shot, they'd have the Amino Ranger skin, and so on. I would just swap their places, but that's what I ended up doing, just because having like this shot in particular, with that many characters in it, it really slows down the scene. And if you do notice that there's less Amino Rangers than like in the actual Minecraft filmed part, that's why. So immediately following that was probably the easiest sequence of the shots, that being just this dialogue bit with, well, just pure dialogue. You know, especially when I don't have to lip sync or anything, it's just the easy part. So I cranked out the speeches of the king and the queen and David relatively quickly, as it was just some basic movements to go through. I did animate a few of the other characters, but just like their heads moving or something. I also tried my best to, you know, mix it up a bit with the camera shots, you know, considering there was nothing else going on at that moment. But then after that, it picks back up again, and upcoming are another 2 shots that took some time to do, right about here, the walking shots. Yeah, these took some time, both because they include a lot of people and because, well, all of them are walking. They're all moving. And, I mean, of course it helps to have a walk cycle on its own to, you know, copy and paste, but I still need to, you know, ease them into the walking and make sure they don't, like, all walk at the same time in unison, because then that would just look extremely off. So then we have Morgana flying up, and you wouldn't notice it, but she actually teleports back down again. The magic of filmmaking. And I wanted to make the magic seem like as powerful as possible, so obviously I changed the size of it, but also add some camera shake, had Morgana stagger back a little, along with the Warden, so it really gave it some weight all the way through to the next shot. Then we get this little fight scene between Abby, Shannon, and Captain Leah. It was at this point as well that I kind of tried to show the least amount of people in the background, or rather at least chose shots that didn't reveal too much, so I didn't have a great amount to animate. Like obviously we have like Gregory in the background here, and what's your name? So, and this shot is chosen, like, it's all dramatic, like, obviously, and then we got Shannon and Abby there, and really it was that, and so the shots, again, wouldn't be slowed down too much. So Leah takes off her mask. You can't see it in the viewport here, but that does happen. So then Leah takes the gun, shoots, Abby blocks in slow-mo. Pretty cool. Shannon shoots, Leah shoots back, and then this sequence here I was pretty satisfied with when Abby deflects the bullets again and swings at Leah. The movement specifically I thought was very fluid, and I thought it worked exactly how I wanted it to. And we move on to the final part here. Ignore Morgana still flying there. So we got this little battle between Derek and the Warden, and granted, in hindsight, this was a part that was probably a little less highlighted and shorter than it should have been, you know, considering like the huge fight that Jake gets with him, but nonetheless, it fit well enough. And right here, it was kind of annoying to get like the swords to clash, because obviously in Blender, without using like any sort of collision modifiers, it's kind of hard to, because like mesh can just pass through one another. But I mean, I'd say it looked well enough. I mean, you can see them clipping together here, but it did its job, and there's still some weight behind it. So I'd say it doesn't look too awkward. And I mean, at this point, I also want to mention how I really liked the camera shots that I was doing. I thought they were very cinematic and cool. Like, I mean, look at this one. Look at this one right here. Look at we've got like some rule of thirds action up in here. So, Derek throws his sword and attacks. I don't know if you actually noticed, but in the original, he also uses magic right after he throws the sword, which then hits the Warden a little bit, which is why he staggers back a little bit like that before he throws the sword. The throwing of the sword was actually really awkward, and because like obviously right here, like he's got it in his hand, and then by the time the camera switches to him, it just looks like it's just floating out of his hand there for a few seconds. It doesn't really look like he threw it. It looks like it just floated out of his hands. So if I could go back and redo that, I would. So anyway, Jake jumps in front of the sword, Derek gets super punched into oblivion, and I tried to have him land exactly where he is in the body acting, which I thought turned out pretty well, and it was a pretty seamless transition. Now then, on to the final battle, one of the most fun parts about animating this series. Now this one was just under 2 minutes in length, about 2,400 frames total. And for the first part of this, I needed to actually remind myself how physics simulations worked. Because the last time I did a physics simulation was probably all the way back to the season finale of Season 2 of Murder Mystery, when the roof of the building blew up. So here is the simulation itself isolated. Went through a bit of trial and error before I got something as good looking as this. So I thought that looked good, so we combined that with the movement of Jake and the Warden, and we got to that as the final output. Let's take a look at it through the camera. And there you go. So the Warden gets flung into the air, lands and breaks the ground a bit, and then the real fight begins. This sequence right here, I loved how it came out. Like, this movement right here, I'm satisfied, really satisfied with how it came out. Of course, you didn't see that arm pass through there because the camera is up here, but you didn't see that. But the overall choreography of this was, I liked, you know, having never really done a fight animation like this before. I was really proud of how I did here. And then this right here, this movement right here, I was so hyped when I pulled that off. Like, it's just so cool. Like, look at it. Also, you may notice there's some teleportation here because the camera's, because he's not in the shot. So then we have a bit of tension here, catching their breaths, and then of course the Warden jumps and Jake kicks him, and then Jake starts rolling, but of course he stops because he's out of frame. Besides the point, Warden lands and he comes back and punches Jake. And this whole interaction happens with a dodge, a kick, he gets up, a dodge, a block, and then this was funny to do. To just fling Jake into the other building here, like, bye. From the start, I was planning on making this happen, so there was at least like a change in scenery, and it turned out a lot goofier than I thought it would. Like, and I mean, also originally I would have put, you know, another physics simulation because he's crashing through the building here, but at the end of the day, it wouldn't have even really been seen, so that would have just been extra work. But you do get a shot of the hole in the building there, and I actually really like that shot. And then the Warden does his epic super jump up into the air and lands. Then there's some more cool choreographed fight stuff here. This part didn't turn out perfect, not exactly how I wanted it to. We got some 360 by the Warden there. But in the final product, it did look pretty good. So then Jake's laying on the ground and hits him with some magic and takes out the orb. For whatever reason, this file does not have it. I went through a lot of different files, just going back and forth between this computer and my laptop, just because I would go home on some weekends and the main file was on my computer, but I had to transfer it several times, and I didn't want to overwrite any files just in case, so I've got quite a few of them. I should probably clean that up now that it's done, but we get there when we get there. Back to what I was talking about. Jake takes the orb out, uses it himself, and then it was just pretty simple to throw the warden off the edge. And looking back on it now, what I really wish I did was mimic the original camera shot of Hank's death, so it could be like a callback, and I just thought it would have been cool if I had done that. So, that was that. I did do an extra scene or two for Louis, but they weren't all that important, so I won't be going over them here. But the last thing I want to take a look at pretty briefly are a couple of the thumbnails I made for the series. Now, obviously, 8 episodes, 8 thumbnails. I wouldn't say all of them were my highest quality of work, but these 2 in particular were my favorites, the ones for episodes 3 and 8. Here's just a quick little breakdown. Some pretty cool stuff going on. Especially on the last one, me and Louis went back and forth in Discord call to get it right, and, well, I'd say that paid off. So, there you have it. Besides the additional voice work I did for the character Gregory, that is pretty much everything I worked on for this Warden series. Once again, if you haven't already, I highly recommend you check out the full series, starting with the Herobrine movie. I mean, that may take you a while to get through, but I promise you, it's worth your time. Thank you all for sticking around and watching me break this all down. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, and make sure to subscribe. It's completely free, and you can always change your mind. I've been MC, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.